Hi, everybody. This is Donna Reed, and I traveled and up with people 1976. This is the first recording that I've done in 2024, partly because of knee surgery, partly because people are busy, through the holiday season. And I'm super excited to welcome Stacey Simmons today. Thank you, Stacey, for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Stacey had a post that was on the Up With People alumni webpage from a number of years ago. And you know how then somebody makes a comment and all of a sudden it pops to the top. So I think this was a 2019. I don't know. It's been a minute since you made that comment.
Yeah, I think it was in 2021 maybe or 22.
Was it? I don't know. All I know is it wasn't just yesterday. So
Yeah, it wasn't.
Stacey, tell everybody when you traveled and up with people, kind of where you lived and where you saw a show.
Yeah. So originally I'm from Kodiak. Well, I'm from Kodiak, Alaska. I grew up in a village called Old Harbor. It's only 300 people, and the only way to get in or out is by plane or by boat. So I'm Sukpiak Alutik. I'm
What?
Sukpiak Alutik.
Okay.
That's what my tradition or my indigenous culture or my
Heritages.
native
Okay.
Sukpiak. So both my parents are indigenous from the island. Both of them grew up on villages on the island of Kodiak. So
Wow.
so I'm Alaska Native. I grew up in a village, and then I ended up going to boarding school like many people from Alaska, and I went to Sitka, Mount Edgecombe. I graduated there. And I was able to see a Up With People show coming through, and they had the show in our gym at Mount Edgecombe, and it was our gym was an old airplane hangar, and so it was really cool. It was a fun show, and I fell in love with it. I sang a little bit, but not a lot. But I love the concept of learning about, different culture. I love the Up With People concept. It embodied what I thought would be something that would be good for me. And it was amazing. So I, as a junior, I applied, and after the show, and I got accepted. And so I started fundraising and working, and I ended up touring Cast E98.
Okay.
And so
E98.
I toured as a student, and then I went back to Denver and I did a warehouse internship because I caught on to the lighting really quickly. I was more of a stage flower. I wasn't really in the show, which was fine for me. I actually really gravitated towards that. And so, and then I did my internship in Denver, and then I went back home, and then I was in college in Anchorage, and all of a sudden Jeff Devaney called me up, and they had lost their lighting technician. They had to go, the lighting technician had to go back home for a family emergency. And so it was like in December, right before Christmas break, and he asked me to be in Denver on January 2nd.
Wow.
As a lighting technician. So I traveled in Cast D2000 as a lighting technician.
And did that mean then you took a break in college, right?
I did. I took a
Okay.
long break. I was a career student. In fact, I'm still going to school right now. I'm in my last 3 classes to get my master's through Gonzaga. So, yeah, so I'm a busy lady that way. But I got my bachelor's through the University of Alaska Fairbanks, in tribal and local government administration with a rural development emphasis.
So I'm gonna say something that's gonna make me sound very not worldly and probably kind of stupid. So because I'm also from a very small town in Northwest Ohio, we had about 500 people, settled by 9 Germans, brothers, siblings, whatever. And so for you to tell me that your family is indigenous to this island, in my brain, I have a look that I
Oh,
think you should
yeah.
have or be,
Yeah.
right? I feel like for me, I probably kind of look German. The other part of me is Swedish, whatever. I don't know. All that judgment stuff that from some history book, maybe.
Yeah.
So, so when you say your parents are indigenous there, where did your ancestors where did they come from? Like your parents' parents?
All from Kodiak.
Oh,
So our people have
wow.
been traced back. I mean, our Alutiiq people have been traced back on the island 12,000 years ago. So my grandparents, my great grandparents are all from the island. But why do I look not as
Yeah.
maybe the typical native that you would think or
Yeah, yeah,
Alaska Native. We have, well, Alaska was owned by Russia.
yeah.
My maiden name was Pestrikov. Mom's name
Ah,
is Olga. Russian Orthodox Christian. That's where my name Stacey came from, is Anastasia or Anastasia,
okay.
that's my church name. And so we grew up very much in a home where we had both Alutiiq words and Russian words intermingled. And so I didn't know how, sometimes which one was which. So basically we have a really strong Russian Scandinavian influence here in Kodiak. So there's a lot of Hawkinsons and Svens and Jurgens, and so there's both Russian and then Scandinavian influence.
Yeah.
And so I do look, and I was born blonde, and I do have blue eyes. And so my dad had black hair and dark skin, dark eyes. My mom has dark hair, dark skin. And I just came out little different colors that my
Throwback.
came out. And I have sisters who have green eyes, and some have black hair, and some have brown. I have 5 sisters. And so I just came out a little bit more, a little lighter. So
Well,
I get that question often. A lot of the
well,
time,
good. Then I don't feel quite so stupid. So,
no, a lot of people don't see that I'm Alaska Native. Some people do, and some people don't. So some people ask if I'm different ethnicities, but yes,
yeah,
and
yeah.
in a village that I grew up in, I was even very Caucasian looking. I mean, they called me Swiss Miss. Um,
That's
so yeah.
funny. Yeah, that's just so interesting. So when you say that about the Russian Orthodox, I did one of the little Alaskan cruises that half the world
Yeah.
does when they've never been to Alaska, and then met up with an alumni in Juneau.
Mhm.
I think that's where we saw a really small Russian Orthodox church. I want to say it was in Juneau. I can't be 100% positive because when you're popping off a boat in
Yeah.
different towns, you kind of don't remember all the details. And now that you say that, I'm like, oh yeah, I
Yeah.
remember that,
Sitka has this beautiful Russian Orthodox church that's in the middle of the main street that you have to drive around. And so that's Sitka's got a really cool Orthodox
Oh,
church.
that's neat. That's neat. So, okay, up with people. I'm going to ask you the up with people questions, and we're going to get on to the rest of your life, which I think
Yeah, no,
seems.
and I should probably say, so in my second year, I actually met
Yeah.
my husband. He was the star of the show. His name was Brock Simmons. We became best friends for a year before we were able to date because of rule number 9, because also not number 9, but like, I'm sorry, can you edit that out?
No, it's funny though, because you're not, if people have said it at in-person things. Yeah. Yeah. And we never
Well,
called it
and
that,
it was
but
because I was a staff member, he was a student. And so we were able to become
oh,
best
like
friends.
robbing the cradle kind of thing.
Well, he's 2 months younger than me, and I think I was probably the youngest staff member. I was 20 when I was a staff member, when I was a
Wow.
lighting technician. I turned 21 on the road. And so
Wow.
I was quite young. I was younger than most of the students. And so
Yeah.
yeah. And so anyway, I met my husband. Like I said, he was the lead singer and guitar player of the show. And I always knew I was going to come home. So when we ended tour, I think we were in Japan when we ended, and then
Okay.
we both went our separate ways. He's from Montana, and then, you know, the stars aligned, and we
Yeah.
ended up um, getting together, and we've been together ever since. And we've been married for 21 years. So
Oh, nice. That's a great story. That's a great story. So tell me, you have 2 children? Is that
yes,
right?
I
A
have a
boy and a
son
girl?
that's 16 and a daughter that is 15. So they're both
Okay.
in basketball right now.
Okay.
We talk about Up with People often,
I wondered about that, like if Up with People had been part of their life,
yeah, they've never
Yeah.
seen a show. I would love, I mean, but it's hard. You live in Kodiak, I'm on an island. And so, it's not easy to get off the islands a lot of times. So just bringing your kids to a show, if they ever came to Anchorage, and I would totally bring my kids up to watch a show in Anchorage.
Oh, how much extra housing do you have on Kodiak for guests? Because you could maybe just like encourage a reunion there. And then,
I would love it. And actually, we've got a new convention center that they're building right now. We've got about 4 hotels here, but there's like billions of Airbnbs right now. So
yeah,
a small reunion, probably about 300, maybe 250 to 300 people could be plausible.
that's an interesting thought. The way that they're planning Ireland this year is like on a university campus where, I don't know if you've paid attention to this, but it's a week and it's, different days and you
Wow.
can choose different activities and it's kind of an a la carte thing where you pay for different things based on what you want to do and stuff like that. So and that came as the result of interviewing alumni. Now, to be fair, the older alumni probably more because there's more flexibility in lives, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have kids that are in school yet, and I'm sure the Europeans are thrilled. I'm imagining they're going to have a great European turnout,
Oh my gosh, I
this
bet
year.
that would be
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. So tell me, when you traveled, what was your favorite song in the show?
Probably One to One.
That's a
I
good one.
loved
Do you
it.
still
I love,
remember the motions?
yeah,
Yeah,
again, I was literally a wall, I was a flower in the background, but as I watched it, that was one of my favorites. I just thought it was beautiful. And
yeah, yeah.
also the dancing and the sign language was really beautiful. So yeah.
So is there a song that you had in your show that you just thought was really stupid? Or because
That's so
I've told my opinions to Paul Caldwell, and he says they can't all be Grammy winners.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, I've not thought about that for a while. I think, towards the end of my second year, I was getting tired and I wanted to go home.
Yeah,
So I think almost, and like everybody, it's almost like you're just you can sing everything in your head and you're just done.
yeah, we're
So
like, oh, we're doing that again. Yeah,
yeah, but honestly, I don't have one that I hated that comes to mind.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, it's at reunions they always have backing tracks, and you do the same 3 or 4 songs. And I said I really want to have a reunion where everybody can do the silly songs that they may or may not remember, but that somebody who did that number or danced that number remembers, just, let's wing it. But nobody ever takes my ideas, Stacey.
I think the one thing is like when the song comes on where we had to get on stage, it's like it triggers me every single time I hear it. Like both songs. It was like Come On Eileen, I think one was my first one, and then the second year was, oh gosh, I just had it in my head and it flew out. But
That's
anyway,
right.
the zombie, you're like, go towards the stage. And it's like always triggers. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember, little memories pop up. So yeah.
That's funny. That's funny. All right. So you're back in Alaska.
Yeah.
You were going to school a lot, but what interested me when I read your post was what you do for a living, and kind of in a way you were advertising for
Mhm.
people to come to Kodiak. So tell everybody what you do now and kind of the
Yeah.
evolution into that.
Yeah. So Kodiak has the largest brown bears in the world, or the largest bear in the world. But let me back up a little quick.
Yeah.
My actual job is I'm the director of shareholder services for an Alaska Native corporation. So
Okay.
there's a lot of history about Alaska and Native corporations versus, let's say, like in the lower 48, you have reservations. In Alaska, we don't. We have for-profit corporations. So the corporation that I work for is called Kodiak. Both my parents were a part of the corporation, so it means a lot to me to work for my people, and I've always wanted to come back home and work for my people. So this is great work that I feel like that we're doing with Kodiak. So Kodiak owns probably about 30 some odd companies all over the United States.
Okay.
We do a lot of government contracting on the East Coast. And what we do is we have these companies, they generate revenue, and with the revenue, it comes to my department, which is the shareholder services department, and I administer benefits. So we do distributions for dividends, but we also do things like elder distributions, like special elder distributions. We do youth scholarships. We have a donation policy. We have cultural programs. So my department, and I manage people here in Kodiak, and then I have people in the Anchorage office that I manage as well. We administer all the benefits for our shareholders. So that's my department,
Wow.
which is it really lends itself to Up With People, and how, I love like my shareholders that walk in and I'm able to work with them, and, they knew my parents, my grandparents. And so it's lovely to be in the position to be able to, Kodiak generates the revenue, then I'm able to just help disperse it to our shareholders in different ways. So that's
Okay,
my job.
let me ask real quickly. So in order then to be a shareholder, did they purchase shares and must they be an Indigenous person or
Yeah,
how?
so in
Okay,
1971, it was the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act.
okay,
It was a it was a lands dispute between Alaska Native people and the state of Alaska. And so
right.
what happened, what came into law was that because we were able to, what was happening was there was a lot of development because Alaska was a young state and they needed money to fund their government. So they started working with the oil industry and they started acquiring land and started to develop land. Well,
Yeah.
we have Aboriginal title to the land, so we basically put a land freeze on it. The Secretary of the Interior created a land freeze for the Alaska Native people, and we had to settle with the state of Alaska in order for them to be able to develop. So in 1971, the law came about, and long story short, we got a portion of our land back. About 10% of Alaska, and then we got a monetary distribution or we got this money.
Warren.
And
Yep.
then we were tasked with creating for-profit corporations. So from
Oh,
that came 13 regional corporations, which Kodiak is one of them. And
okay.
then there's 240 village corporations. So each of those village corporations reflect, and I would say this generally, and I don't want to go into big
Yeah,
history
yeah.
lesson, but for instance, this is an example. My mom was from Afognak, my dad was from Old Harbor, and they're both under the region of Kodiak. So my dad had 100 shares of Old Harbor Native Corporation stock, and my mom had 100 shares of Afognak Native Corporation stock, and they each got 100 shares of the regional of Kodiak stock. So
Got it.
they had to be 18 years of age on a certain date in 1971. No, so they didn't purchase them. None of our shares are able to be sold. They have to be either gifted or willed. You could only will them to your lineal descendants, but you
Wow.
can't give them to anybody. But we encourage our people to gift shares if they are going to, or will shares to their Alaska Native descendants, because when somebody who's not Alaska Native, say it's like a spouse that they give their shares to after they pass, that is non-voting. So and I don't like, that's a lot of information, but
It's
basically
super fascinating for a person um, who's never even remotely been in that arena. I think that living in Arizona versus Ohio. I mean, we had a lot of Native American names, right? And you learn where you live, you learn those names and all that. Whether I knew anything about those tribes is another thing. So living in Tucson, there is way more direct conversation learning related to, Southern Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, all of that than there ever was. And yet I can't even pretend to know the details of things. So that's and honestly, in my business, I'm a realtor. People
Mhm.
pass away, they marry for a second time. The kids live across the country, or something like that. So the whole idea of do you gift it? Do you will it? Do you have a descendant
Mhm.
is a fascinating thought process to think
Yeah.
about, managing it and
It
everything.
is.
So,
Yeah, and my department also manages all of the estate processes with the shareholders. So I know, I know a bit about the process of how it works. But also, it's like you were talking about having descendants. One of our big things is maintaining that we connect with our shareholders and our descendants. So one of our big pushes is that we want to register everybody as a descendant. Like I was a descendant before I became a shareholder. Then my parents gifted me shares.
right.
Now I'm a shareholder of 3 different corporations. And so,
Oh, okay.
and I'm able to get benefits. Things like with my mom's corporations, for instance, they have a elk hunting subsistence program. So I've gone elk hunting. I've gone elk hunting 4 times, and I got 3 elk.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's a subsistence food for our people, and of course we share all of our food. But so, for instance, that's one program for a village corporation. And recently, my dad's village corporation, both my kids are shareholders of all of the corporations. I made sure that they were. But my son just did a bison hunt, and he was able to get his first bison, and he also got his first seal harvested, and you have to be Alaska Native to get a seal. Um, and then, they got deer and ducks. So they had a really good subsistence hunt. And, it's great because there's like 5 different families and elders that, my mom has her fish box and her meat box that she's going home with, that has elk, deer, and ducks in it. And so, so we're just, I mean, super blessed. Subsistence living is definitely a part of our people's,
Yeah.
what we do, but a big part of my life and my husband's life too. So I pulled my husband from Montana right in, and he fits in really well.
But for him, yeah, when you didn't say he was from Chicago or something, because I was
No,
like, okay,
he's
that'd
from
be very
Montana.
different. If he's coming from, oh, I'm like, oh, Montana, that was probably a good fit. So
Yeah.
I want to, because I have only the free Zoom and it only goes a little while, I want to talk to you a little bit about the Bears.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. So in 2019, I took over the Kodiak Brown Bear Center. It's a subsidiary company of Kodiak, and the big thing about it is it's a high-end eco-tourism bear viewing facility. But the big thing is that it's all on Kodiak land. So it's private land that it's on. So you won't be getting anybody coming in unless they're permitted or we know they're coming. So at the lodge, it's only 8 guests at a time. I've got a chef there. I've got a hospitality person. I've got a manager out there. And then I have 2 guides. I have a main guide and a lead guide and an assistant guide. And we have a 30-foot catamaran that we take people out there, bear viewing at different locations. Everything that's out at the lodge had to be brought in by plane or helicopter. And so when you get here, it's an all-inclusive trip that starts from Kodiak. So when you jump on the plane is covered. And it's a 45-minute float plane ride away from Kodiak.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so it's called Karluk Lake. And it's got the highest concentration of bears here in Kodiak because of the location. It has early and late runs of salmon that come through.
Wow.
So the lodge is amazing. And like I said, our chef Bryant, he's classically trained in French and Mediterranean cuisine, and right now he's in Thailand taking classes, so he can come back. And I always say people come for the bears, but they stay for the food because it's
If he can take that meat, those products, and turn them into a food like he learned about in Thailand, but maybe it's bison or something. I mean, that's,
yeah.
super creative. That's cool.
Yeah, and we do, and all of our fish that we get brought in is from a tribe here locally that processes fish, the Shunak tribe. And so yeah, I mean, it's an amazing place. We open up in mid-July and we end of September for bear viewing. And then in October, we have a fly fishing season because we have a steelhead run, which is a huge deal for fly fishermen. And then we own almost all the land that goes along the river that goes to the lagoon and then the ocean. So we own some cabins along the only cabins out there. And so we have a fly fishing program as well, which is pretty exciting.
So, okay, when this is all done, when I post it on the Up With People alumni page and I tag you,
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to fill in some things like the spelling of the tribe and, or the group that you're into and to share more about this, because that you're speaking to a traveling group. And in my brain, I'm like, wonder if my kids would do this. This would be a cool thing to do. Like, who do I know that might want to go do something like this?
Yeah,
Even my older brother who,
well, it's definitely for the adventure,
Yeah.
because I would express that, and which really lends itself to Up With People quite nicely,
Mhm.
because we're immersed into it's not only that you're sitting there bear viewing, you're hiking this trail. There's 2 different bear viewing locations that you're getting into. One could be on, one location that we have is like on an archaeological dig site that's the oldest on the lake, that's about 4,000 years old. So, we also have archaeological digs going on during the season in August which is pretty exciting. Last year there was a huge find about our people that we learned about, which is super exciting. So we were trying to incorporate culture into the lodge as well. But yes,
Yeah.
I could totally fill in all the blanks, and it does lend itself well. And if people do book through me directly, I can definitely give them a discount. Especially for Up With People alumni, I'm like, yeah, let's get where
So I'm thinking about the trips that I do because I've done some river cruises recently,
Mhm.
and they always have 4 or 5 options of things to do, and they give you ability levels, for what you can do. And if it's riding up a hill, I can't do it. I've had 2 knees replaced if it's, and so that would be something that I think would be important to know. Like, okay, is this level 1? You got to walk a half a mile and you're going to sit and have
Yeah.
coffee, or is it, going up
Yeah.
the
The one place that we do like hike the longest, and it probably is about 250 yards.
oh, okay.
It has actually, we built a trail, so we have geo-blocking mats down, and
Oh, good.
so you have a flat surface that you're walking, you're not walking in the, so that's the longest location is actually
Okay.
geo-blocked. And
Yeah.
anyway, it's easy to walk.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the other locations, you're not walking too much into them. We do have people of a lot of different abilities come sometimes, and I would say a lot of times just staying on the boat and bear viewing is a lot of fun, just because you get so close to the bears, and they're right on the water, they're right fishing right in front of you, but they're
Yeah.
not scared of you either. You have to understand walking in that you could be 20 feet away from a bear who's feeding. And we're very safe. We take, that safety is our highest priority. So we have the whole system set up, and we're trained very well. We have a bear biologist on staff who has her doctorate in bearology, which is a thing. She's from Ireland, actually. So yeah, I mean, so the ability level, I would say you have to be able to walk at least 10 minutes. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
super hard or difficult, but we
Yeah.
do have people that really want to hike. So, sometimes we'll break off into 2 groups, and one group will, but that's the good thing about having a small group.
Yeah. Yeah. Super, super interesting. I'm always looking for different things to do. And assuming this knee in another, year is in good shape or whatever.
Yeah.
It sounds fascinating compared to what I did, which was just a minimal tour, back in 18. I did that with some friends and stuff. So, all right, we're going to share that. Now I'm going to ask you the whole, did you travel and eat anything that you would never eat again?
Natto.
What is that?
In Japan, it's fermented soybeans in Japan. Oh my gosh, no. I think they did it. They did it it was a cast thing where they blindfolded you, you're up on stage and you had to like guess. And I don't know how I got picked. But
Yes.
they gave me natto, and it was horrid.
I kind of did something like that in person at the Cactus Lounge last summer at the reunion. I had somebody come up blindfolded and tasted things that the different people had brought. And so like the salted licorice from Scandinavia or something like that, depending on, what you had. What about, was there anything you tasted for the first time anywhere that you loved?
So many things for the first time, because my first well, I had a European tour. My first tour was half in Europe. One of the things that stick out though, I remember being in, I think it was Belgium, and they found out that I was Russian because of my last name, Hesterkov. And
Yeah.
so they made me borscht, and I'd never had borscht before.
And what'd you think?
I mean, it wasn't the worst thing I've ever tasted, but I wasn't the biggest fan. Um, since then, I've actually have an appreciation for borscht. I've tasted some really good stuff, but
Yeah,
yeah, it was the
fun.
one that like drops in my head. Also, I remember being in France and getting a whole chicken, I think, for one of our meals like a whole chicken, I believe.
The whole chicken. Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, yeah. All right. So you have a 15 and a 16-year-old, and Up With People is continuing. I sat in on a communications meeting yesterday or the day before, I don't remember, related to the upcoming tours and what they are doing. And one of the things that I like to ask those who traveled and met their spouses or just had a good experience, what would you say to either your children if they said, I want to go do this, Mom? Or how would you say to other Kodiak natives who say, what
Yeah.
was this thing you did? I want to go do this. What would you tell them?
Well, I love one that I met my husband that way. I love the story that we can tell, and and it often brings up, when you meet people and if they're musical, or you meet kids that are really into music or
Yeah.
theater. I often plug up with people. I did work for a tribe here in Kodiak, and this young man that my boss's son ended up learning how to play guitar from Guitar Hero. I know this sounds funny,
No, I've heard that. Yeah.
but then he learned how to play guitar, and I was like, you should go up with people, and he did, and he toured, and he was the guitarist. And so I'm a huge advocate for talking about up with people.
Cool.
And my kids know all about it. We have the pictures up. They call my husband cringy because he, had a purple, like, his show shirt.
Wrinkly
One of his show
costume.
shirts was purple, and it was
Yeah.
my daughter just was like, oh my gosh, Dad, that's so cringy.
Well,
Um,
and when you guys were traveling, the costumes were still given to you. When my son traveled in 13,
mhm.
they just had to bring shirts and had a color palette. And then
Oh,
once they got there, they were like, okay, you're going to wear the aqua shirt in the show, that kind of thing.
well,
So,
that would have been nice because I hated my show outfit.
actually, he said that in his interview. He goes, I think it's nice when people can choose what makes them feel comfortable
Oh,
in what
yeah.
they're wearing instead of saying, here, you have this double knit green dress.
Oh my gosh.
Go
And
on.
I remember them being so like specific that we couldn't like share or like switch.
Yeah.
This girl that looked like me, Alana from
Yeah.
Canada, her and I decided one day that we were going to switch outfits because we looked a lot alike. And then they caught us and they were not happy. So
Everybody has those kind of a stories. When I think
I
about,
know.
what did you do? What did you do? Everybody did something like, by the third semester, third part of the year or something, you were like, oh yeah, we're doing
Oh
this
yeah.
or that. So, well, I'm going to wrap it up. I normally have a bunch of these filmed way in advance and then I don't share them for 2 or 3 weeks, but since I haven't done one for a while, I'll probably share it pretty quickly.
Oh, well, thank you
And,
so much for
yeah.
this
Oh,
opportunity.
and you'll, I'll have to look up your son. I don't know if or your husband, if he's on Facebook and,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and it was funny, like I thought he was going to be a rock star. He ended up being a state trooper. So he was an Alaska
there you
state
go.
trooper for 20 years, and he just retired. And now he is the executive director of the Visitors Bureau here in Kodiak. So if
Fun.
anybody's interested in learning more about Kodiak, go to Discover Kodiak. And my husband will probably answer the phone half the time because it's small space, but he loves Kodiak and he's all about
What I
commercial
should do is
tourism.
find that number and just call him by name and see if he like, oh, so I understand you were in Up with People. See if he,
He'd probably hang up or no. That's the cop in him. He'd probably ask you more questions.
like, how do you know that? Yeah, exactly.
Probably.
Exactly. Well, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for doing this. And, gosh, I'm just going to have to learn more. Might put this on my list,
Oh, please.
of
Well, Kuyana
things
Shinak,
to do.
that means thank you very much in Lutic. And
Awesome.
it was lovely going down a little memory lane for a bit. And yeah,
Perfect.
if anybody's ever interested in coming to the Brown Bear Center, call the number
Yeah.
and talk. Just say they're Up with People alumni. My guy that works for me, he knows that I've gone and traveled, and I was telling him about this. So yeah, I already
Awesome.
a discount for anybody that wanted
Oh,
to
it'd be
come.
really fun if this just brought you some business, and
Well,
got to
I
see
hope
some
so.
other.
Also, I'd love to just get people on the island. It is
Right?
one of the most beautiful places, and I know you're getting off, but wait,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to.
Wow.
Kodiak is
Wow.
gorgeous, and we
Yeah.
have so much on this island worth sharing with people, and I think I would love to share it with more people from Up with People.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stacey. Have a good rest of the day, and I'll tag you when I post it. Okay?
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Bye.